Before you watch to the end of this story, please kindly help answer this question. Do ghosts exist? There is something chilling about love that defies reason. Something so raw, so enduring, that it stretches even beyond the boundaries of life and death. This is the story of Asempa and Ama-Ata, a tale not just of devotion, but of mystery, heartbreak, and the strange whisper of the supernatural. They were the envy and the puzzle of the village. Married for over a decade, childless, yet completely inseparable. As hard-working farmers, Asempa and Ama-Ata shared everything: sun-scorched days on the farm, evening meals under their bamboo canopy, and the ache of unanswered prayers. Some admired their bond, others sneered and whispered behind their backs. "How can love thrive without a child?" they asked. But Asempa would laugh it off, saying, "Children are a blessing, but my wife is my life." There is this Akan proverb that says, "Obi inchere abofranyame," no one teaches a child about God. Some truths reveal themselves. When doctors were far and hope was fading, they turned to a fetish priest. The verdict was cruel. Ama-Ata was barren. The only way forward, the priest claimed, was for Asempa to remarry. But he held her hand, smiled gently and said, "If I have to lose you to gain a child, then I choose emptiness." Then came that fateful day. Asempa had gone to the farm alone. On his way back, the sky turned grey and thunder roared like ancestral drums. As he rushed through the forest path, a massive old tree, loosened by the storm, cracked and crashed down upon him. The forest swallowed his last breath. When he didn't return that night, Ama wasn't alarmed. She assumed he had taken shelter in the farm hut, but just after midnight, she heard his knock. "Asempa," she called out. "I'm cold. Let me in," came his soft reply. She opened the door and saw him, soaked, shivering, his skin icy to the touch. "You're freezing," she gasped, pulling him close, but he didn't hug her back. He simply said, "I'm tired. It rained heavily." The next morning, the air around the house of Asempa and Ama-Ata felt unusually heavy. Though the storm had passed, something lingered, something unseen, yet deeply unsettling. Asempa sat quietly on the old stool outside, tears slowly rolling down his cheeks. He looked broken, as though carrying a sorrow no living soul could lift. Ama-Ata, still trying to make sense of the night before, knelt beside him. "Asempa," she whispered, "why are you crying?" He didn't respond. His gaze remained fixed on the earth beneath him, as though it held the truth he couldn't speak. Then came a distant noise, frantic voices, footsteps, urgency wrapped in fear. A hunter and a few men were approaching, their shouts growing louder as they neared the house. Asempa's head turned slowly toward the sound. His eyes darkened, not in fear, but in understanding. He looked once more at his wife and murmured, "Meba, I'm coming." He stood, walked into the room, and moments later slipped quietly through the back of the house. Not even a minute passed before the hunter and his companions stormed into the compound, breathless. "Asempa is dead," the hunter cried. "I found him in the forest. A tree fell on him. His body is still there." Ama-Ata froze. "That can't be," she gasped. "He was just here. He left the room not even a minute ago." Another man, visibly shaken, added, "I saw him too. He walked behind the house. I swear on my mother's grave." There is this Akan proverb that says, if you follow someone and their body feels heavy, it means the person is not alive. The villagers, confused and afraid, decided to follow the hunter. They traced the muddy path toward the cocoa grove, hearts pounding with dread. And there, Beneath the massive tree that had fallen during the storm lay Asempa's lifeless body, crushed, twisted, and still. Gasps filled the forest. Eyes widened in disbelief. Some wept. Others backed away slowly, crossing themselves and whispering prayers. Ama Ata fell to her knees beside him. Her fingers trembled as she reached out to touch his cold skin. Her heart shattered into silence. All along, the man she slept beside, the man who sat weeping that morning, the man she kissed, had already been dead. News spread like wildfire. Children were kept indoors. Elders gathered in hushed circles. The brave ones stood at Ama's door, afraid to speak. She refused to eat. Her hands grew cold. Her lips barely moved. The sorrow tore through her like wind through torn cloth. Women sat with her. Some wept. Others simply held her hand. But no words could undo the truth. She had embraced a ghost, shared her bed with the dead, and unknowingly said goodbye to her husband long after his final breath. The villagers still speak of that night. They say true love is powerful, but sometimes it opens doors that should remain closed. What happened was considered a grave taboo. The elders said it was an abomination for a living soul to sleep beside the spirit of the dead, unaware. They believed the realms of the living and the dead had crossed, and that such a breach could invite chaos if not cleansed. Ritual fires were lit, libations were poured. They called upon the spirits of the land and sky, seeking to restore balance. Purification rites were performed for both Ama, Ata, and the body of Asempa. Eventually, he was buried with solemnity, but his spirit did not rest. Far away from the red earth of Akim-Wenchi in the eastern region, Asempa's spirit wandered until it reached a secluded village near Asin-Fosu in the central region. It was a place where no relative of his had ever set foot. A place of silence, thick forests, and old gods. There, Asempa took on a new form. He posed as a stranger who had lost his memory, but with time he gained fame as a healer. He would touch the sick, and they would rise. He would speak to women troubled in their marriages, and their homes would find peace. He read palms with uncanny precision, describing people's pasts and futures like someone flipping through a familiar book. His name spread far and wide, not as Asempa the farmer, but as Asempa, the forest healer. But behind the miracles, no one knew he wasn't entirely human. They didn't know he was the restless ghost of a man who had died in love's name, and now roamed the living, carrying the spirit of a forgotten god, buried deep within the forest, where his soul had passed. One day, as dusk settled over the village, Asempa met a farmer returning from his field, Mr. Dua, a well-known and envied man whose crops always flourished, even when others failed. Asempa stood still by the roadside, his eyes glowing faintly under the setting sun. "Dua!" he called out. "You must stop." The farmer stopped, startled. "Stop what?" "Stop using the charm you buried under your third cocoa tree. The gods are angry. You feed your land with stolen spirits. Every season your neighbor's fields wither while yours bloom. It will no longer be tolerated." Dua's heart skipped. No one was supposed to know. He had paid a powerful juju man years ago to enchant his farm, ensuring that his crops would always be the most abundant. But that came with a price. Others' lands suffered, the rains avoided them, and sickness quietly grew in the surrounding soils. "How dare you accuse me?" Dua snapped. "Who told you this nonsense? You're just a herbalist." "I am more than that," Asempa replied calmly, "and the forest sees what men hide." That night, Dua went straight to the village chief, enraged and shaking. "This stranger, this so-called healer, is accusing me of evil I've never done," he cried. "He must come and prove it before the elders, or leave this village." The chief, curious and cautious, agreed. A message was sent to Asempa, summoning him to appear before the council at sunrise, to defend his words and reveal what powers guided his tongue. In the chief's palace, the air was tense. Villagers gathered in clusters beneath the thatched canopy, whispering and watching as Asempa stood before the council. Mr. Dua sat to one side, arms folded, a look of righteous indignation smeared across his face. "Asempa," the chief said sternly, "you have accused a respected farmer of spiritual sabotage. This is a serious matter, and yet you come here with no physical evidence. What do you have to prove your words?" Asempa stood tall, his eyes calm but piercing. "I have nothing to prove, Nana. The gods have already spoken. There is this Akan proverb that says, 'If you ask an old woman something and she gives an answer, believe her and move on.'" But the chief was not amused. "Then this is defamation," he declared. "And in this palace there must be consequences. You will pay 3 sheep, 3 fowls, and a fine of 100 sedis to compensate Mr. Dua." Without protest, Asempa bowed, turned, and within 3 days fulfilled the judgment. People murmured, some mocked, others watched in silence. But 1 week later, something strange began to unfold. In the dark of night, Asempa returned to Dua's farm, just as the forest fog rolled in. He found the hidden charm buried under the 3rd cocoa tree, exactly where he'd said. With a quiet prayer and a handful of sacred leaves, he removed it and vanished into the mist. Days later, Dua's crops began to wither. First the cassava, then the plantain. The yam vines dried like old ropes, and the once rich soil cracked and crumbled underfoot. Rain fell, but his land refused to drink it. Meanwhile, surrounding farms, those that had struggled for years, suddenly burst with green life. Maize stood tall, tomatoes ripened in clusters, and farmers who once barely survived began to fill baskets with produce. The transformation was undeniable. Confused and desperate, Dua returned to the spot where the charm was buried, but the ground was bare. Panic set in. He remembered Asempa's warning. Shame replaced pride. With a bowed head and trembling steps, he visited Asempa in the night. I was wrong," Dua said, barely audible. "Please forgive me. I did it. Not for myself, but to stop others from overtaking me. I poisoned their growth so mine would flourish." Asempa's voice was calm and steady. "Your confession is not mine to receive. Go to the elders. Tell them what you've told me." The next morning, in a palace filled with stunned silence, Dua confessed everything, how he'd used charms to suppress other farms and monopolize the harvest. Some elders gasped, others shook their heads in disbelief. But the truth was out. There is this Akan proverb that says, "Truth doesn't hide for long." The wind had carried it to every corner of the village. From that day, balance returned to the farmlands. Every farmer harvested with joy, knowing that their labor would finally bear fruit. The curse was broken. Justice, both human and divine, had prevailed. Many people in the village, and even from surrounding communities, no longer saw Asempa as just a healer or soothsayer. They began to whisper his name with reverence, calling him the man of the unseen, a bridge between the spirit world and the living. Children ran after him with joy, elders bowed respectfully, and the sick lined up at his door with offerings of food, herbs, and eggs. Asempa's presence was no longer just honored, it was sacred. One quiet morning, he crossed paths with a young woman on her way to the stream to fetch water. Her face was tired, her steps heavy. Asempa watched her closely and called out softly, "Akosua." Startled, she turned. "Yes, sir? You're desperate for a child, aren't you?" Her eyes widened. How do you know that?" "I see what others don't," Asempa said gently. "When you get to the stream and fetch water, 2 golden fish will fall into your pot. Do not throw them away. Bring them home, cook them well, and eat with your husband. Only the 2 of you. That meal will end your barrenness." Tears welled in her eyes. "Are you serious?" He smiled. "Very." True to his words, as she dipped her pot into the stream, 2 small golden fish leapt in as if summoned by divine hands. She gasped, but remembered his instructions. She took them home, prepared them with care, and that evening shared the meal with her husband in silence and reverence. Within a month, her body began to change. By the 2nd month, the village midwife confirmed the news. She was with child. The story spread like wildfire. Her husband, beaming with joy, told neighbors about the strange man who had seen what no healer or priest had been able to predict. Asempa's fame soared higher. One afternoon, as he sat under a neem tree behind his shrine, a frail and poor farmer approached with a sack of dried cassava, yam peels, and 3 small garden eggs. "It's all I have, Asempa," he said, bowing low. "But I wanted to thank you. You've helped this village in ways we can never repay." Asempa accepted the gift with a warm smile. He looked deep into the man's eyes. "In 1 month," he said, "your poverty will turn into wealth." The farmer chuckled awkwardly. "I don't even have good shoes, Wofa. I have no land, no job, no luck. I only gave what I could because I believe you are sent from above." "I don't speak to impress," Asempa said. "Wait and see." Exactly 1 month later, the farmer took his dog on a walk to a distant forest path where old cocoa trees once grew. As the dog chased a rat, the small animal disappeared into a shallow hole at the base of a large anthill. The dog began to dig furiously, barking and pawing at the earth. Curious, the farmer bent down to help. After clearing the earth, his fingers struck something hard. He dug deeper and, to his disbelief, uncovered an old clay pot sealed with a thick lid of hardened leaves and palm rope. With trembling hands, he opened it. Inside, gold coins, old, ancient, but glistening with unmistakable wealth. The poor man dropped to his knees in tears. His dog barked joyfully, dancing around him as if celebrating their fortune. That day he returned home with more than gold. He returned with a story that would elevate Asempa into legend. There is this Akan proverb that says, "If you go and you don't understand, ask, and if you witness something, speak of it." And speak they did. From that day, Asempa was no longer just a stranger or healer. He was a divine enigma, a man who walked among mortals, yet clearly belonged to something far greater than what eyes could see. 9 months after the prophecy, the woman who had encountered Asempa at the stream gave birth to beautiful twins, just as he had foretold. The village rejoiced. The cries of newborns filled the air with a joy the family had waited years to taste. In gratitude and honor, the parents named the children after the man who had ended their barrenness, Asempa Paini and Asempa Kakra. From that day, the twins were seen as sacred gifts, and Asempa's name became a blessing spoken on lips with reverence. 3 months later, another strange event occurred. Asempa was walking through the village when he spotted a mad woman wandering barefoot and mumbling to herself. She wore rags, her hair tangled like an abandoned bird's nest. For years, she had roamed unnoticed, shunned by all. No one knew where she came from, and no one dared to ask. Asempa paused, his eyes locking onto her. There was something behind her madness, something his spirit could see. Without hesitation, he approached her gently and said, "Come with me." She snarled, but Asempa touched her forehead, whispered a chant in a forgotten tongue, and she calmed instantly. He took her to his home, bathed her, fed her, and began healing her with sacred herbs, chants, and silence. Within days, the village watched in awe as the woman's mind returned to her. Her eyes cleared, and the madness vanished like smoke in the Harmattan wind. The villagers were stunned. Never before had they seen a mad soul restored. They gathered at his shrine, some kneeling, others weeping. "This man is not ordinary," they whispered. "He walks with the gods." Though the woman couldn't recall her background, her name or family, Asempa chose to marry her. "She is pure," he said, "and her spirit was only lost, not broken." The village accepted the union, for who could question a man whose words birthed twins and healed the insane? 6 years later, their marriage bore fruit. Twins once again, a boy and a girl. He named them Asempa Pani and Asempa Kakra, a sign that the spirit that walked with him was still alive in his bloodline. For a while, their home was a sanctuary of joy. Laughter returned to his courtyard. His shrine overflowed with gifts and testimonies. But joy, as it often does, met sorrow. Just a few years after giving birth, his wife fell ill. No herb, chant, or spirit could save her. She passed quietly one dawn, her hand in Asempa's. Her death was mourned across regions. The entire village wept for the woman who had once been mad, healed, loved, and transformed into a mother of grace. Asempa was left with the twins, 2 bright-eyed children who mirrored his quiet strength and the woman's forgotten gentleness. He raised them with wisdom, teaching them the power of words, of nature, and of kindness. 5 years passed. By now, Asempa's fame had spread far beyond Asinfosu. From Mankesim to Techiman, people made long journeys, carrying the sick on their backs, just to receive his touch. His compound became a place of healing, his name whispered in prayers and sung in lullabies. But then, something mysterious happened. Something that tied the beginning of his journey back to where it all began. In his hometown of Akim Wenchi, an old woman lay dying. Her breathing was shallow, her eyes rolled back. Desperate, her family sought every remedy, but nothing worked. By fate, a traveler from Asinfosu happened to be visiting the town. He heard the cries of the woman's family and asked, "Why are you suffering like this when salvation is not far?" "What do you mean?" they asked. "There is a healer in a village near Asinfosu. His name is Asempa. He heals what no one can. Even madness bows before him." "Asempa?" one of the elders muttered. "That name? We once had a man by that name here. A good man, but he died long ago." Curiosity, confusion, and fear wrapped around them like fog. The family of the dying woman, with no other option, agreed to make the journey. The past was about to meet the present, and the spirit of Asempa was about to confront the very roots he once left behind. Asempa had always walked with a quiet fear, tucked deep within his spirit. Though he had become a revered healer, one whose name stretched across regions and whose miracles defied understanding, he remained a man haunted by a past he could never truly bury. It was not death he feared, for he had already crossed its gate once. It was recognition, the face of a brother, a cousin, or worse, Ama Atar. He often sat under the moon with his children curled by his feet, watching them laugh and play, their innocence soothing his tired heart. But in the stillness of those nights, a silent clock ticked in his soul. He could feel it, his time drawing near. Not just any time, but the moment fate would demand he close a door he had walked through long ago. One dawn, as he sat in silence outside his shrine, he felt it, an invisible wind brushing his shoulders, not from the earth, but from destiny. He closed his eyes and saw them, faces journeying toward him. He saw sickness, he saw a dying old woman, he saw Wenchi. "No," he whispered to the wind, "not yet." But the road had already begun to bend. That evening he called his twins, Asempa Pani and Asempa Kakra, to sit beside him. "My children," he began, voice steady but low, "I must go on a journey, a long one, so long that even I don't know when I'll return." They stared at him, confused. "But Baba, we can go with you," little Kakra said, her voice trembling. He smiled and brushed her cheek. "No, my angel, this road, I must walk it alone, but I need you to do something for me." The next day, Asempa prepared them with food, clothing, and instructions. They journeyed with him quietly from the outskirts of their village to the town of Asinfosu. From there, he took them to the lorry station and boarded a vehicle with them to Oda. He never said much during the ride, only held their hands tightly, as if memorizing their warmth. In Oda, he stepped off the car before they reached the final terminal. He led them quietly through the busy station, avoiding all eyes, never speaking his name. "See that car?" he whispered to them at the Wenchi-bound station. "That's the one you must take. When you arrive, ask of a woman named Ama Atar. Tell her your father sent you. Tell her he said you are her children, and that she should never cry for him again. Tell her he is okay. Where he is, the wind is gentle, and the earth is light." "Baba, when will you come for us?" Pani asked, holding back tears. "When the moon touches the river," Asempa said softly. "Look up. I will always be there." With a final embrace that felt like the end of a book, he watched the car pull away, his children waving through the window. He did not follow. He simply turned, walked into the mist, and disappeared. 20 minutes later, the car pulled into Wenchi. The twins, tired but brave, stepped out and asked the first person they saw, "Please, where is Ama Atar?" The woman pointed, confused. "The widow? She lives just there, by the old cocoa tree." They walked straight to the compound and knocked. Ama Atar opened the door slowly. She hadn't had visitors in weeks. Her eyes squinted at the children before her, two beautiful souls who looked nothing like strangers. "Please," little Kakra said, "are you Ama Atar?" "Yes, my dear," she replied slowly. "Our father said we should come and stay with you," Pani added. Ama blinked. Your father?" "Yes. He said we are your children. He said you should not cry anymore. He is fine where he is." Her heart skipped. Her fingers trembled. What is your father's name?" The children said in unison, "Our father is called Asempa." Ama Atar's legs gave way beneath her. She collapsed into a stool nearby, her hand covering her mouth as tears flooded her eyes. "Asempa," she whispered. No, it cannot be." But as she looked closer into their faces, she saw it. The familiar gentleness of his eyes, the calm pride in their brows, the smile that once melted her heart. And suddenly, everything made sense. And nothing made sense at all. Back in the village where Asempa had become a legend, the family of the dying woman from Accusations waited with hope, stretching their hearts thin. They had travelled far, carrying their relative on a makeshift stretcher, believing the healer of wonders would lay his hands upon her and summon her back from the edge of death. But Asempa never returned. Night fell. The crickets chirped. The moon rose high and dipped again, and still no sign of him. They waited outside his compound, lighting a fire, whispering prayers, hoping that he would arrive as he always did, quietly, powerfully, mysteriously. At dawn, as the mist rolled over the village paths, a woman approached them. She was cloaked in a plain cloth, barefoot, and carried a calabash wrapped in white cloth. Her presence felt calm, too calm. She walked straight up to the family and spoke in a low, confident tone. "Asempa said I should give this to the woman. She must drink it before the sun rises fully. He is coming soon." Without waiting for questions, she handed over the calabash and turned away. The family, desperate and clinging to faith, gave the concoction to the sick woman. She drank. Within an hour the shivers stopped. Her breathing steadied. Her eyes cleared. She sat up, strong, alert, healed. The family erupted with joy, falling to their knees and praising the gods. But when they turned to thank the mysterious woman, she was gone, vanished, no trace of her anywhere. Still, they stayed. They waited for Asempa. Morning turned to afternoon, then evening. But he never returned. Disturbed, they decided to speak to his neighbors. "Can you describe this Asempa?" they asked. The family described him, tall, dark, quiet, with a gentle gaze and a walking stick carved with strange markings. An elder's face dropped. "That sounds exactly like Asempa, but the Asempa we knew died many years ago." Silence fell like thunder. The wind suddenly picked up. The villagers, unsettled and drawn by curiosity, made their way to Asempa's compound. His door was locked. No one had seen him or the children. Fearing something unnatural, they forced the door open. The moment it cracked, a violent, icy wind burst through, cold and howling, as though the spirit of a mountain had been trapped inside. Everyone staggered back. Inside, the room was empty. Not a single item remained. Not his staff, not his herbs, not even the mat he used to sleep on. It was as if he had never lived there. "He's gone," someone whispered. The family returned to Accusations, carrying with them a tale heavy with mystery and awe. When they arrived at the palace to report the strange events, they found Ama-Ata already there, seated with some elders, discussing something that had just happened. As the family described their encounter, the room fell silent. One elder cleared his throat and spoke solemnly. "There is this Akan proverb that says, 'If an animal stares at you and speaks, then water must be pouring on your head.' It means when the impossible happens before your eyes, you must accept that the spirit world has touched you." The chief sat back in his stool and nodded slowly. "Asempa's spirit has brought home his children. His work on this side is done." Ama-Ata's eyes filled with tears, not of sorrow, but of closure. The elders decided in that moment that the children must never be told the full truth. Their hearts were innocent, and their path was now under the guardianship of the ancestors. Rituals were performed that night, libations to the earth, songs to the skies, and fires lit at the edge of the village. Prayers were said to guide the spirit of Asempa, to thank him, and to protect his children. From that day, Ama-Ata raised Asempa Pani and Asempa Kakra as her own. She told them stories of a man named Asempa, not as a ghost, but as a great man who lived, healed, and loved deeply. As time passed, Asempa's twin children, Asempa Pani and Asempa Kakra, grew in wisdom, strength, and mystery. Even in their teenage years, their hands worked wonders. They healed the sick with herbs their father had once used, and often they didn't need to speak. The plants seemed to obey their very touch. People traveled from far and wide, not only to see them, but to witness them work. The twins knew things they had never been taught. They mixed roots and leaves in perfect harmony, cured diseases that had defeated seasoned healers, and revealed secrets hidden deep in the spirits of the afflicted. The people began to call them Inta, ghost twins, not out of fear, but awe. These children, an old woman once said, carry the spirit of their father in every breath. But one quiet evening, as the wind sighed softly through the trees, something even stranger happened. The twins, sleeping in their room, had the exact same dream. In that dream, their father appeared, standing beside a river, dressed in a white cloth, glowing softly beneath a moonless sky. He smiled at them gently and said, "Children, your mother still mourns. I'm at peace, but I cannot rest because she is lonely. Tell her to marry. I will not be jealous. I only want her to be whole again." Then he handed them a small herb in the dream, a soft, silver-leaved plant, and said, "This will open her heart. Give it to her." When they awoke, both twins ran to Ama Ata and shared what they had seen. She wept. At first, she resisted. "How can I forget a man like your father?" she asked. But the dream stayed with her, and with time, her heart softened. The herb was found, growing behind their house, and she brewed it into tea, just as the dream instructed. 6 months later, Ama Ata married a humble and kind cocoa farmer who had long admired her from afar. The ceremony was simple, but there was laughter, music, and joy in the air once more. And then, something no one expected happened. 2 years into her new marriage, at an age where no one thought it possible, Ama Ata conceived. When the midwife announced it, people gasped. When the baby was born, even the elders said they had never seen a child so radiant, a girl with shining eyes and dimples just like Asempa. They named her Aquia Mansusu, which means, "I never expected it." It was a name full of wonder, disbelief, and grace. This story might sound strange to those who only believe in what they can touch, but in the olden days, such stories were not rare. Spirits manifested through people. Gods whispered through dreams. The dead walked gently among the living, not to harm, but to guide, to heal, to love once more. There is this Akan proverb that says, "If a child begins to speak mysteries, it means the gods are with him." So it was with Asempa and his children. The world is full of mysteries. Some you read in books, others you feel in your bones. But the greatest ones you encounter with your eyes when the veil between the worlds grows thin. If you love this story, please subscribe to Ananse Web of Tales. Share where you're watching from. Thank you for being part of this journey. And now, the question still remains. Do you believe ghosts exist?